For my secondary research, I looked at Your Next because I knew I wanted to do a horror at this point. For Your Next, 62% of the people who went to see it were 15 to 24. As a result, I ended up casting people of that age group, bar one, because I wanted people to be able to emphasise with the characters and relate to them, and as a result manifest the horror on themselves. The gender is 50-50, so I didn't really need to put emphasis on making it girly or more masculine, because horrors already have an expectation of gore and blood. As for my primary audience research, I created an online survey and then shared it on Facebook, messaged a large group of my friends to encourage them to answer the questions. I got lots of responses to the question, what draws you into going to see a horror film? One was good reviews. As a result, on my second poster, I put lots of reviews with stars ratings, like 4-star from the Daily Mail or 5-star from the Guardian. Another popular reason it got the horror film from my audience was uniqueness. So that made me want to make something different that hadn't been done. I did the Pied Piper because there'd been fairy tale adaptations like Snow White in like action films like Snow White and the Huntsman, and Red Riding Hood in horror, but there'd never been the Pied Piper. Finally, another reason that was quite popular for going to see a horror film was if their friends would persuade them to go see it, or the friends were interested in it. So I put a lot of emphasis on creating a good social media campaign. I did this by incorporating hashtag Pied Piper to hopefully get the movie trending and then to reach an even larger audience. 11 out of 15 of my audience said that the location should be either abandoned or deserted. This made me try my best not to get people into the shots, and I also took pans of the open park, for example, to give the sense of the victim being totally alone and completely vulnerable. Black and red was the most popular choice from my audience, so I incorporated both in all my media products, including the trailer, because I wanted to create a brand identity and show consistency. There was mixed responses whether who should appear on the prints, so I used a mix of both the antagonist and the protagonist, because I thought that different characters will attract different audience, and I wanted to maximise the audiences. Despite the feedback from my friends on Facebook, it seemed that despite the amendments I made, that this was not good enough. My teacher suggested to me that I started the cover again. However, I didn't have enough time to do another photo shoot, so I took inspiration from one of the covers off Total magazine. Amendments I made for my magazine cover was to zoom into the antagonist to make him seem more piercing and commanding on the page. I changed the masthead to cover the dead space, and as a result I think it looked more professional. I also made a bigger skyline to make the content on the page look more eye-catching and draw more readers into the magazine. The general feedback I got from the rough cut of the poster was that the text at the bottom of the screen was too difficult to read. I tackled this firstly by changing the font and using a gradient tool to fade black from the bottom into white, so the brown and the white text could be read easily. without disrupting the actual image. My audience, in my rough cut feedback, prompted me to add logos and reviews, which I did to the first poster because originally it was very bare. I added logos at the bottom of the poster. And this time I also made a second poster, which was landscape with the antagonist in the middle, with reviews on either side of him to try and further entice the audience into going to see the film. As for the trailer, following feedback from showing my peers in class, the general feedback was the narrative wasn't clear and there was no Pied Piper concept. As a result of my feedback, I completely changed my narrative. I added new characters to add realism because it wasn't professional having just two characters. I also added new locations for similar reasons that it wasn't professional just to have one or two. I added the flute sound to replace the rats that I couldn't find, so I had that Pied Piper concept. The narrative was based on the mystery of suicides rather than just one murder, which I thought is more exciting as audiences will take pleasure from trying to guess who's going to be next. I got shots of the antagonist, the Pied Piper, cutting up photos of the victims, which now gives a reason for audiences to not to trust the antagonist and see him as a bit of a creep and dodgy character. The narrative reveals that the Pied Piper controls his victims to kill themselves. It's also revealed in the use of the intertitles, which I later added after my rough cut feedback.
I think the Pied Piper is a horror or thriller, and I think this because of the limited colour palette of the reds, blacks and greys, which is traditionally being used in horrors.
Horror mainly due to especially the magazine covers and posters, the colours, the expressions on the actors' face and the models' faces.
As well as the actress's face and performance on the poster and in the trailer, because she looks frightened. But after seeing the trailer, I think there's also psychological elements to the film.
The second poster, the landscape one, I like the pose of the actor, the way he's kind of sinister look in his face, and then the portrait one with the girl covering her mouth and the red eyes, that looks again quite scared, as if she's scared. And the film is again, even in the opening titles, you use like the Red Terror Productions and all the Holy Pictures, that companies, they shout horror, the use of graves, just general things like that, that makes me think it's a horror.
And I think it is successful because it is clear that it's a horror thriller, and this is again done by the colour palette, and the red eyes on the black and white poster have a really good effect.
I think they would be successful due to the fact that they're very similar to what's out there. They're very high quality, and it's what you expect from a horror picture. And again, with the film trailer, yes, it's a student film, but the use of shots, the actors, the amount of actors in the areas used, you would expect to see it in a budget film, in a good budget film.
And they do work well as a package because they're clearly linked, and this is from the colours used and also the font choice of the title, because it looks creepy like in a horror film.
Do you think that they work well as a package, and how? Yes, I do. Again, especially the landscape poster, it really shows off the antagonist of the film. In this first one with the girl screaming again, that does show horror and links with the main protagonist in the film, or at least I think it is the main protagonist.
I think horror fans look for certain elements in products, and I think these portray them quite well, because they look for like a very dark atmosphere, and this is done in the trailer by the non-diegetic music and the narrative that's going on.
Especially the colouring, the models in the like the colour scheme, the models and the font, they're all shout horror, and you generally associate horror moviegoers with that kind of like that kind of ideology. So you would expect to see that when you're looking for a horror film to watch.
I think the narrative is quite clear, and I think the Pied Piper is the main guy, and he sort of messes with young girls' heads and sort of stages their death as a suicide, but he's doing something to them psychologically that no one knows about. So I think it's sort of a psychological thriller horror, but it's really good.
From watching the trailer, you can clearly see the narrative is that it's kind of a psychological horror. You see that the antagonist controls the minds of the enemy, like the protagonist, to kill them. So I guess the idea of that is trying to find a way to kill him or stop him.